As we start chapter 2, I will change my approach a little bit from what I did in the last chapter and give you a little bit less section by section guidance on going through the book. I want to stress, though, that reading the book is critically important to an online class such as this one. One of the most important things to point out at the outset of this chapter is that biochemistry is characterized by numerous low-energy interactions. This is important to maintain homeostasis, as flexibility and molecular motions are very important. The Oracle of Delphi said, "Whom gods destroy, they first make rigid." There are several intermolecular forces that are important in biochemistry. These are what I learned as London forces, but what other people call van der Waals interactions and what other people call dispersion forces. Whichever name they go by, London forces are the weakest force of interaction between molecules and are about 1/1000th as strong as a covalent bond. Another characteristic is that the larger the molecule, the larger the London force, and I've demonstrated that on this figure by showing that if we have a larger atom, there can be more electrons on one side of an atom, which gives it a larger partial positive charge. The second kind of interaction that is very important is the dipole-dipole interaction, which occurs between any molecules that are polar. For example, the formaldehyde molecules that I have shown in the lower right-hand side of the slide. These are approximately 1/100th as strong as a covalent bond. And again, occur between any molecules that are polar. The strongest intermolecular forces are the hydrogen bonds, and we will say more about that shortly. By weight, about 70% of cells is composed of water, H2O, and therefore a firm understanding of water is crucial to the study of biochemistry. As a consequence, we'll spend some time talking about the importance of water. Shown here, I have a Lewis dot structure of the water molecule. Very important to note is that the oxygen-hydrogen bond is a polar covalent bond with the electronegativity pulling electrons towards it and away from hydrogen. Because of that, and in conjunction with the lone pairs of electrons on the oxygen, the water molecule is a polar molecule overall, with the oxygen having a partial negative charge and the hydrogens having a partial positive charge. This is important for two reasons. First, the polarity favors solubility of a wide variety of molecules. Second, the directionality holds macromolecules in a given conformation. It turns out that when we start talking about proteins in chapter 5, we are going to find that they have a very specific shape, and that specific shape determines their functionality. In order to visually highlight the polarity that goes on, which gives this directionality to the macromolecules, I've also shown here a water molecule in the space-filling format. Because of the central role of the hydrogen bond to biochemistry, we must spend some time and make sure that we understand them thoroughly. A hydrogen bond occurs when a hydrogen is attached to a nitrogen, oxygen, or fluorine atom and comes in proximity to a second nitrogen, oxygen, or fluorine atom. The reason that these are the only three elements that matter is shown in this graph. What I have done is plot on the y-axis the boiling point of various saturated elements as a function of the period number on the x-axis. In closed circles, I have the group 4 elements: carbon from period number 2, silicon from period number 3, germanium from period number 4, and tin from period number 5. As you can see, these 4 elements form a very predictable increase in boiling point as we go from period 2 to period 5. In open circles, I have the group 5 elements: NH3, PH3, ASH3, and SbH3 for nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, and antimony. It is readily apparent that nitrogen behaves differently than the other 3 elements. In open triangles, the halogens are shown. The boiling point that we would predict for HF, based upon the other halogen boiling points, is very different from the experimentally derived boiling point. In filled triangles are the group 6 elements. As we should now be, what should be a very familiar theme, water has an exceptionally different boiling point than would be predicted based upon the periodic trends of these other elements. Thus, it is only oxygen, nitrogen, and fluorine that participate in hydrogen bonding. Carbon compounds do not. I'm stressing this in particular because, especially in organic chemistry, we see readily that lots of students want to say that hydrogen attached to carbon participates in hydrogen bonding. That is not true. It should be noted that although fluorine participates in hydrogen bonding, it is not particularly relevant to biochemistry. However, those of you interested in the medical field should recognize that many pharmaceutical compounds are decorated with fluorine as a way of influencing metabolic rate, and therefore it is somewhat important. In this figure, what I have done is to show 5 water molecules. The hydrogen bonds that connect the water molecules are shown with magenta dashed lines. Molecules are referred to as hydrogen bond donors or hydrogen bond acceptors. The green molecule at the center of the figure is a hydrogen bond donor to the blue water molecule. At the same time, it is a hydrogen bond acceptor from the red molecule. Because water has 2 lone pairs of electrons, it can accept 2 hydrogen bonds, and because it has 2 hydrogen atoms, it can donate 2 hydrogen bonds. The hydrogen bond is extremely short-lived, with a half-life of something less than 1/1,000,000th of a second. Because of the short half-life, the water is held together in a way that allows it to not be viscous. It will be noted that water can form 4 hydrogen bonds, as the center water molecule is doing. Calculations and experimental evidence suggest the number of hydrogen bonds that a water molecule participates in is 3.6. The short half-life leads to water being described as existing in flickering clusters. Another property of water is that it has a very high specific heat. This means that a huge amount of energy is stored in water due to this hydrogen bonding. A high specific heat is very important in that it helps us maintain body temperature. I grew up in Wisconsin where it was routinely getting to 30 below zero over winter. And if water did not have a high specific heat, one would freeze immediately upon going out of doors. Another very important thing about water is that it displays three colligative properties, which are decreased melting point, increased boiling point, and increased osmotic pressure. These are more important chemically than biochemically. However, the biological context is that life would not exist in as many places if it were not for these colligative properties. For example, there are worms that grow in glacier ice, and there are bacteria that grow in boiling water of Yellowstone Park hot springs. Finally, water is weakly ionizable, which is hugely important in talking about pH.